Imagine putting on a pair of headphones as a kid to listen to one of your favorite bands. As you're listening and looking over the artwork, you know there's only one guitar player, yet you hear multiple guitar tracks. One singer, yet multiple layers of vocals. Your mind is blown. How could this be? What type of occult practice is this? This is the album that sparked my interest in music production. This is the album that got me started down that never-ending rabbit hole and made me appreciate music production as an art form in and of itself. The band? Led Zeppelin. The album? Number 4. I'm a child of the 80s, and like most Reagan babies, my first initiation into Led Zeppelin was through my parents. Rifling through my dad's cassette collection as a kid to figure out what to listen to next was one of my favorite activities as a child. And of course, Led Zeppelin always piqued my interest as a kid. The iconoclastic guitar riffs of Jimmy Page, the wailing banshee-like vocals of Robert Plant, John Bonham, and the always underappreciated John Paul Jones on bass, keyboards, orchestration, pretty much whatever you needed him to do. I probably don't need to spend too much time on the history of Led Zeppelin. If you're here, you probably are well familiar with these guys and where they were in 1971. By this time, these were 4 Brits who had taken heavy blues worldwide and had become, arguably at the time, the biggest band on the planet. For their 4th record, Jimmy Page had decided that the album would have no official title. Instead, featuring 4 hand-drawn symbols on the inner sleeve and the label, each representing a member of the band. Eschewing traditional recording studios, Jimmy Page and the band shackled up at Headley Grange with the Rolling Stones' mobile recording truck. This setup, nursed along by Page and engineer Andy Johns, birthed an iconic rock and roll masterpiece. As I mentioned in our recommendation of Stevie Wonder's Inner Visions, I'm somewhat of a musician myself. The type of kid who sat there in my youth with my guitar and Tascam 4-track, trying to figure out how the musical sausage is made. And like Stevie Wonder, Jimmy Page is a perfect professor for the rock and roll music production college as both an art form and as a compositional tool. For example, early in his career, Page realized that the traditional approach of sticking a microphone right smack against a guitar cabinet speaker, well, it yielded a small sound, which makes sense. Imagine sticking your ear right up against a speaker. It's focused, compressed, and kind of stifling. Now imagine that same speaker across the room, turned up loud. Suddenly that sound is filling the room. There's all this subtle nuance that you just can't receive when the sound source is that close to your ear. Would you like another example? I got one for you. That iconic drum sound on When the Levee Breaks. John Bonham had set up his drum kit at the bottom of this 2-floor staircase. The mics were not on the kit, they were at the top of that staircase, compressed to all hell. All that natural slapback reverb and delay you're hearing, that's just from the staircase itself. It's instantly recognizable now, but back in 1971, there was nobody on the face of the planet doing stuff like Page and the crew were doing. Another key part about this album is the diversity of the musical genres chosen, and the way those songs and genres sort of showcase different types of musical production. That fuzzy, almost otherworldly guitar sound that Jimmy Page got on Black Dog, he left the amps in the recording booth and plugged his guitar straight into the mixing board, cranking all those fader knobs straight to 11. The Battle of Evermore is an acoustic number played with a slight medieval zeal. The mandolin and guest singer Sandy Denny give it a distinct feel from the 2 rock and roll bass numbers that came before. And then there's Stairway to Heaven. And I mean, what else can be said about Stairway that hasn't been said already? Production-wise, to me, this is probably the apex of Led Zeppelin's entire musical career. The song gradually builds, adding different elements along the path. This album contains all the little ear trinkets that I absolutely adore about Led Zeppelin and bands from this time. But you have to listen closely. That slight squeak of fingers grazing the fretboard as Jimmy Page is changing chord voices. That almost indiscernible sound of John Bonham keeping time on the hi-hat with his foot during the quiet interludes and right before the song builds to its crescendo. The multi-track vocals of Robert Plant that aren't perfectly in sync and time-aligned. So instead of sounding like one huge voice, it sounds like this cacophony of just wailing banshees. Misty Mountain Hop is played in a drop tuning that, as a kid of 80s and 90s metal and grunge, rang true to my heart, even as a young lad. Going to California is that classic folk country singer-songwriter type of sound. And closing the album is that thunderous When the Levee Breaks. The Memphis Mini cover with that thunderous, massive, almost unsettling drum sound that dominates everything. Which brings me to my song highlight, which is track 6, a song entitled 4 Sticks. What immediately struck me about this song as a kid was this was really my first initiation into songs in a different time signature. Most music that we listen to, especially as a Westerner myself, maybe some of my viewers, most music is going to be in what's called 4/4 time. Each measure of music is 4 beats long. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Get the idea. But 4 Sticks, most of the song is in 6/4 time. To make this as simple as possible, what this means is that riff, the loop, the hook, if you want to use that terminology in this instance, it will resolve itself and start back over. It's just going to take a little bit longer and a little bit of a different path to get to its own resolution. But it's primarily that weird time signature that made me wear out this section of that cassette tape when I was a kid. Tertiary side note, Rollins Band did a fucking awesome cover of this that's on YouTube right now. You gotta go check it out. Back to 4 Sticks, the actual title of the song comes from Bonham playing the song with, well, 4 sticks instead of 2. As the lore goes, he had seen the band Cream the night before and their iconic drummer Ginger Baker, and Bonham was feeling some type of way and decided that if he needed to be better, he needed double the arsenal, so to speak. 4 Sticks is also one of the earliest Led Zeppelin songs where John Paul Jones is playing the VCS3 synthesizer. Now for you tech heads, that might go over your head, but for people-eyed listeners, you would probably recognize the sound of this synth from anything Pink Floyd related from Dark Side of the Moon on onwards. The main reason why the song resonates to me, as I think about it, is that outside of Stairway, 4 Sticks really captures the ambitiousness of the album. Notably, this song was so difficult and unusual for Bonham to play that he only performed it live one time, and it was 6 months before the album was actually released. Now for all the ways that this song is sort of atypical for a Led Zeppelin song, it does hit all the pillars of a great Led Zeppelin track. A thunderous drum groove that propels the song while acting as both a foundational and lead instrument. A Jimmy Page guitar riff that is so infectious that you want to learn it after you hear it for the first time. John Paul Jones being that glue that holds this entire band together with his impeccably understated playing on the bass, the keys, and the synth. And of course, Robert Plant doing his best Banshee impersonation to everyone's delight. This album endures because it's classic songwriting. These are really all just pop structured songs played with that heavy blues focus that was becoming a hallmark of late 60s Britain. These are world-class musicians. When they go to record, they already know these songs inside and outwards, frontwards and backwards, and upside down. They're also progressing so rapidly that all of these classic bands, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, the Rolling, they're still going, but you get the idea. All these bands typically put out their entire catalog in less than a 10-year span. It's pretty fucking incredible when you really sit down and think about it. And most importantly, Led Zeppelin IV, it's fun without being goofy. It's thoughtful without being pretentious. Accessible enough to get it on the first listen, while also being meaningful enough that we can talk about it 50 plus years later with the same passion as we would have on the same day that it came out. You want old-fashioned rock and roll? We got that. Heartfelt ballads? Got you covered. A song that veers into the proto-metal? A raunchy blues number that contains one of the most sampled drum sounds in music history? Maybe, just maybe, one of the most epic songs ever recorded. Led Zeppelin IV does this all across 8 tracks in just over 42 minutes. So, do yourself a solid. Bust out those big headphones with the long curly cable. Fire up that old lava lamp. Cue up Led Zeppelin IV. Let it take you on the journey that Jimmy Page and the boys wanted you to go. Allow yourself to rock and roll. Visit the Battle of Everett. Dance along those misty mountains. And make sure to get back to California before that levee breaks. And all along that way, sit with the music. Let that wide open sound of John Bonham's drum kit resonate within your soul. Become enveloped by the reverb-drenched vocals of Robert Plant. Stay grounded with the bass lines of John Paul Jones. And get lost in the guitar and production mastery that is Jimmy Page. All the while, remember to listen for those ear trinkets and slight imperfections. Often in life, it's the imperfections that make stuff truly memorable and unique. As always, all thoughts and opinions are of my own or of my team being the Caps. Thank you so much for being here this week. Make sure to check out Led Zeppelin IV and make sure to love someone today. We'll check you next time.